You know that feeling, right? The sound of an ice cream truck jingle in the distance, and suddenly your mouth starts to water before you even see a speck of ice cream? Well, that whole sensation is tied to one of the most famous discoveries in psychology, classical conditioning. And it all began with a scientist named Ivan Pavlov and his very, very observant dogs.
This was the big question, this central mystery that kicked everything off. Why on earth would a dog have a physical reaction, drooling, to food that isn't even there? I mean, it sounds kind of impossible, doesn't it? But this one simple puzzle would lead to a discovery that completely changed how we think about learning itself.
So let's picture the scene. It's the 1890s. This Russian scientist, Ivan Pavlov, is deep into his research on the digestive system in dogs. Super serious stuff. But right in the middle of all this, he stumbles onto something, well, something totally unexpected. A little detail that had absolutely nothing to do with digestion.
Get this. It wasn't the food that was making them drool. The dogs were starting to salivate the second they saw the lab technician, the guy who usually brought them their food. And that's when it clicked for Pavlov. This wasn't just some weird biological quirk. This was a learned, psychological response. And this accidental discovery, it quickly became his new obsession. Pavlov wasn't just going to let this mystery slide. He shifted gears from just watching things happen to actually making them happen. He designed a brand new super-controlled experiment to see if he could create this strange learned response on purpose. Okay, so his experiment had 3 clear phases. First, he established a baseline. You give a dog food, it salivates. Makes sense. You play a metronome, and nothing happens. It's just a sound. Then came phase 2, the conditioning. He would click the metronome and then immediately give the dog food, over and over again. Click, food, click, food. And finally, the breakthrough moment. He played the metronome sound, and the dog started salivating even with no food in sight. The dog's brain had literally forged a new connection.
And that was the giant aha moment. What Pavlov figured out was that if you take something totally neutral, like a ticking metronome, and you pair it consistently with something that causes a biological reaction, like food, eventually the neutral thing starts to trigger the exact same reaction all on its own. He didn't just discover this, he gave it a name and created a whole new vocabulary to explain it.
So let's break down his terms, because they're actually pretty simple. The food is the unconditioned stimulus. The dog doesn't have to learn to want food, it's a natural thing. The drooling that happens because of the food, that's the unconditioned response. Again, totally natural, unlearned. Now, the metronome starts out as neutral, but after being paired with the food, it becomes the conditioned stimulus. And the drooling that happens just from hearing the metronome, that is the new conditioned response. And it's the clear signal that, boom, learning has just happened.
So what's actually going on in the brain here? Well, every time the brain processes the metronome sound and the taste of food at the same time, it starts building a little bridge, a new pathway between those two ideas. After enough repetition, that pathway gets so strong that just hearing the sound is enough to activate the whole salivation response. It's like the metronome sound found a shortcut to hijack the original pathway for food.
But Pavlov didn't stop there. He was a thorough guy. He quickly found out that this whole conditioning thing wasn't just a simple on-off switch. No, it had rules. There were specific conditions that made it work, affected how strong it was, and even ways you could reverse it.
For instance, timing was everything. Learning happened way faster when the sound came just a moment before the food appeared. And get this, the conditioned response wasn't a perfect copy. The saliva from just the sound was actually different, more watery, which suggests the brain was anticipating food, not reacting to it. A really crucial point is that this only works on involuntary reflexes, like drooling or your heart rate. It can't teach a dog to, say, fetch your slippers. And finally, you can undo it. If you keep playing the sound without ever giving food, eventually the dog stops drooling. He called that process extinction. Okay, so this is way more than just a cool story about dogs from 100 years ago. This process is happening to all of us all the time. In fact, you can actually see classical conditioning in action yourself with a super simple experiment you can try at home.
All right, grab a friend. First, just relax and get your resting pulse rate. Got it? Okay. Now, have your friend tap a pencil 5 times, and as soon as they stop, you hop on one leg for 30 seconds. Then check your pulse again. It'll be higher, obviously. You're going to repeat that whole cycle 4 more times. Tap, 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 hop. Now, on that 5th and final try, your friend is just going to tap the pencil, but this time you don't hop. Just stay still and check your pulse.
So, what happened?
If the conditioning worked, you'll see your pulse rate actually went up from just the sound of the pencil taps. No exercise required. Your body literally learned to associate that totally neutral sound with physical activity, and it started preparing by raising your heart rate. It's the exact same principle as Pavlov's dogs, just playing out with your own heartbeat. Pretty wild, right?
And that brings us to one last really big question. If our own bodies, our involuntary responses, can be conditioned by something as simple as a pencil tap, what about all the conditioning we're exposed to every single day? Think about it. Every single commercial that pairs a soda with images of fun and friendship, or a car with the feeling of freedom and adventure. Are these just really sophisticated modern-day versions of Pavlov's metronome, shaping what we want without us even noticing? It seems the bell is ringing all around us.